Welcome to Dying in Grace, the program where we discuss all aspects of death and dying, end of life, and what it really means to have a beautiful life and a graceful death. Each week we interview a member of our community. My name is Arlene Stepputat, and if you'd like to know more about my own personal experience with death and dying, please go to our website, dyingingrace.com. There you can read about me, and there's a 3-minute video that will explain to you my own journey befriending death so that I could come to this place to help educate you, our viewers, about befriending death yourself. Each week we like to bring in an expert in our community here in Santa Barbara. And this week I'm grateful to have my guest, Paloma Espino, the house manager of Sarah House, come to be with us this evening. And I'm so happy you're here, Paloma. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, it's really, Sarah House is such a gift, such a jewel in this community. And I think there's people out here that might not know about Sarah House. So could you first tell us who is Sarah and how did we get Sarah House? And it goes back further than that too. So
it does, and I'm so glad that you invited me, because you're right. Sarah House has been around for 27 years, and yet we still have a couple of people who go, "Oh, I had no idea you guys existed," which is kind of like, darn it. And well, a chance to teach people about Sarah House. So Sarah House opened its doors in 1991, but prior to that, we had a little home called Heath House on Sola Street, and that was opened by, her name escapes me.
Alice Heath.
Alice Heath, thank you so much.
And the reason I know that is because you may not know this. Alice Heath also is the reason why Santa Barbara has the second oldest hospice in the country.
Yes.
Because she was a pioneer for all the country in end of life. And so she opened Heath House, but why? There was a special reason why she opened Heath House.
So she opened Heath House in the late 80s, wanting to do something about all of these young men and a couple of women, but mostly young men dying of HIV. And she just felt that there was more that Santa Barbara should be doing, and so she decided she would open this wonderful home where she was going to take care of the men. She herself didn't do the physical work, but she had the vision behind it. And she hired Debbie McQuaid, who was our first house manager. And so Debbie came in and really started the culture of Heath House that then went with Debbie when she went to Sarah House. So Heath House was open, there was a great need. Debbie McQuaid tells the story that men were dying within a couple of weeks. Nobody was making it, medications weren't working, and sometimes when they had the chance to get that cocktail, as they used to call it back in the 80s, it was almost too late. The body didn't have a chance to react to it, and people were just, young men were dying, all of them extremely young. So Sarah,
let me just comment on that, because I'm older than you, in case you hadn't noticed. And I lived through the AIDS epidemic in New York City. And New York was an epicenter. And I recall the first person I knew who died of what they thought was pneumonia. I mean, I remember when they didn't even have that name of AIDS. And so I lived through how people treated other people, the fear and the paranoia, and because of the people who were contracting it. It was a very scary time for a lot of people, and it wasn't our best response.
Yes.
But at the same time, there were loving people all across this country that came forward and said, we have to love each other, and so
and do better.
And do better.
Yes.
People deserve that. But it was really frightening because there was no cocktail when we first started. You got that diagnosis, you were going to die, and that really made people terrified.
Yes.
And luckily they did have medical breakthroughs, and people can I mean, Magic Johnson is your perfect example of somebody who diagnosed and still around. So so the need for Heath House subsided, and then who was Sarah?
So actually there was still a need, and because Heath House only had 8 bedrooms. Sarah Shoresman decided that she wanted to open a second home with the same mission, taking care of young men.
Okay.
And so Sarah House came from the ground up. We learned all of the mistakes we were making with the first house, because we had the opportunity to build Sarah House from the ground up. Everything that we had learned didn't work with the house that was bought for Heath House. We made better, bigger rooms, spacious enough to hold wheelchairs. The dining room, we learned, is a place where everybody comes together. The kitchen is another place where people just want to hang out for no good reason whatsoever. And so when Sarah House was built, and Sarah Shoresman was the one that put a small amount of money, but really she gathered the community. And I was told, I never got the opportunity to meet Sarah Shoresman, but I was told that she was quite a force. And she gathered the community and really from day one said, Sarah House will be for the Santa Barbara community, and we are asking the Santa Barbara community to be present and be for Sarah House. And so we have a picture at Sarah House on groundbreaking day where she must have gathered about 200 people, and there she is among all of them. And these are all volunteers who gave people that painted the house, the people that built the house, the people that later came and donated furniture. And it just has felt like from day one we've always belonged to the Santa Barbara community. We're here to help, and we're so happy that they've always supported us, and we hope that they continue.
And Sarah House has a unique need. I mean, a unique model. It's not a medical model. I mean,
Right.
People go to that home, and it really is indeed a home. It feels like a home. I've been there. It's warm. There's nothing hospital-like or medicinal.
Yes.
It's really a very, like you're going in somebody's home with just a lot of
Yes.
bedrooms. But there's no medical staffing that even though it's 24/7 care. So it's kind of what
Yes.
I believe is called a social model. Is that accurate for dying? I mean,
Yes.
the people that come there are dying.
Yes.
And you have a unique population that you target usually. And who usually ends up at Sarah House?
So in 2004, which is when I began at Sarah House, the need for folks with AIDS had really diminished. Everybody was doing great. The medication was working, and we were now taking care of young men who were fine. They were going to outlive the prognosis that they were given. And the then house manager and our then executive director decided, what are we going to do now? What will be our mission? And so, long story short, we decided to do what we had always done, which was hospice care. We didn't call it that then, but truly, everyone we were taking care of was dying. And so we were doing hospice care. And so when Debbie McQuaid and Randy Sunday decided to use the house and open it up for anyone who was dying of anything, we became what is known as the social model hospice, which really, it just means that we don't have nurses around the clock. We have caregivers like myself and many other people who are wonderful caregivers at home, but they just don't have a title or a degree or
Right.
anything, who know how to take care of someone, who aren't afraid to do it, and who it's their passion, like it is for all of the 14 of us at Sarah House. Sarah House, when we opened our doors, we always knew that we wanted to take care of the poor, the vulnerable, the folks that needed the help. We always felt that folks that had money had options, and it's fantastic that they do, but what about the folks that don't have the money or the resources? And so we decided that's the folks that we want to help. So 2 ways to come to Sarah House are you have to have a hospice diagnosis and you need to be low income. And if you have both of those things, then the doors of Sarah House are a possibility.
Yeah. So what about you? How did you said you've been at Sarah House a really long time. What's your story? How did you come to find out about Sarah House, and how did it become your passion and your calling?
Well, we go back to the times when people actually read the newspaper and there was a classified section.
Oh yes, I do remember those.
Do you?
I do. I'm older than you. I do remember those things.
Those were awesome days. I was a caregiver. I had been a caregiver in this community for quite a while. And I had worked in what I thought were the best nursing homes, from the Montecito beautiful Casa Dorinda, which I thought was the absolute cream of the crop. and some of the not so good ones that taught me amazing skills and showed me what not to do.
Right.
And so I learned a lot of lessons that way as well. But I had worked in several nursing homes and I had wanted to do something different, and I really didn't know what that was. And there in the classified section was an ad for Sarah House with wanting caregivers that weren't afraid to work with people with HIV. And I was afraid to work with people with HIV. I feared it. I didn't know anything about it, not really. At that point, I don't think I had access to the internet. I remember going to the library and looking at encyclopedias and kind of going, what is this HIV thing? I was really intrigued and I was scared, but I decided to walk myself over to Sarah House and apply because I was drawn to it even though I really feared it. And walking into the doors of Sarah House the first day, I thought, there's really nothing scary here. This looks like someone's house. I interviewed, Debbie McQuaid interviewed me, and I was just really mesmerized by the passion she had, by how wonderful she just sounded, and how she kept saying, you know, there's really nothing to be afraid of, but if you are, let's not continue. And I said, no, I want to do this. And so she gave me the opportunity, and I started my journey with Sarah House.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I so appreciate. It's kind of like that book title, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Yes.
And you know, it's kind of like part of you was called, and you had to overcome what I think our whole society had to overcome, was that, you know, that whole fear of the unknown, which at some level, the whole AIDS epidemic is a metaphor for how our whole society deals with death and dying anyway.
Yes.
We fear what we don't know.
Yes.
And we avoid, and we make up stories about things, or we don't talk at all. And that really was what was going on with AIDS then too.
Oh,
and that's
absolutely.
why people didn't have, or they made up crazy stories about stuff. And I worked in the early days, I worked with both teenagers and babies that contracted AIDS. And I was a caregiver for some of the babies, and I know people thought I was crazy. And I felt people wouldn't touch me, or, you know, I felt the shun as a caregiver because I was working there. So it's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing it. And so you've been at Sarah House for how long now?
Going on 15 years.
Wow.
Going on 15 years, yes.
Wow. And so now you're the house manager or the main administrator. And what is it that brings you joy about doing that job?
You know, Arlene, honestly, what brings me joy is the human connection. That's really it. Getting to help your brother or your sister, hearing the stories. And I do know that death is scary, and it can be, because I've sat with people who fear it, and that's not easy. And I've sat with people who are in tremendous pain, and it's not always physical. A lot of the times their pain is emotional, and pain is very difficult to sit with. I've done it, and it's been exhausting and draining, and that's part of death too. But death is also beautiful, and it's peaceful, and it's going to happen to all of us. And so I feel if the one thing that unites us humans is death, why can't we just talk about this? Why can't we just welcome it and prepare for it the best that we can at each level in our lives? Because, you know, I certainly didn't speak like this 10 years ago.
Right.
But I can very comfortably now say I'm okay with it. And I've learned a lot from it. And really, my teachers have been those that have been dying, and the ones that I've been fortunate enough to sit with. Those are they're the reason that I show up to work. They're the reason that Sarah House is open. I love what I do.
And is there a lesson, you said you learned a lot of lessons. Is there a lesson that a memory of a patient, you know, something that you go, oh, I remember her or him, and here's what he taught me? Do you have a specific story you could tell us?
I have so many, Arlene, I really do. I will tell you the latest one that left me with the lesson that I hold now. This happened about 3 weeks ago. A very beloved person in our community passed away, and she was someone that had done hospice work far longer than I had. I remember seeing her name come through my fax machine, and I couldn't believe it. She was one of us, and she was now going to be our resident, and I couldn't believe it. It was surreal to me. I remember calling Cottage Hospital and saying, is this our friend? And I won't say her name because really she was very well known. And they said, yes, it is. So I got to Cottage Hospital, and I was so nervous, Arlene. I didn't know, what am I going to tell her that she doesn't already know? You know, she knows far more than I. What am I going to say? And I feared seeing her because I had no idea physically what the disease that she died from, what had it done to her physically. And I was really afraid that I wouldn't be able to hide my, like right now, my emotions.
Right.
And so I went in, but she was a generous, amazing teacher. She just was. I think it was natural to her, and I think that she could see that I was nervous. And she said, come in. And I remember going, oh God. But she looked just like herself, which helped so much, that she just looked like herself. So I remember her saying, you know, I'm so happy to see you. And she made a lot of small talk. And then I said, why are you choosing Sarah House? Because honestly, I believe she could have gone anywhere in this community, and the doors would have been open for her.
Right.
She had planted amazing seeds, and I just couldn't believe that she had chosen us. And she said that she had chosen Sarah House for a couple of reasons, but the one that she wanted to share with me was that she believed that at Sarah House, we offered people the opportunity to be where they were at. She said, I know that you guys will honor the place where I'm at, and I believe you will get me to where I need to be next. And I said, we will do our best. So she moved into Sarah House. At that point, what she wanted to do was to get healthy and to get strong. And she told me, I don't have to accept what I've been told. What I want to do is I want to eat all this wonderful organic food, and I want to get this body stronger. I want to nourish my body. I think I can beat this. I think I could extend my time. Will you help me? And I thought, we can do that. We can buy great food for you. We can take care of you. We can do this. You're not asking for anything impossible. And so I said, absolutely. And I will tell you, Arlene, that every fiber of my soul believed we could do it. I really did. I thought, she's strong, her spirit was strong. I thought, she can do this, we will help her. I believed strongly. And in a couple of days later, she realized that her body was too run down. Her body wasn't responding, and I knew it, I could see it, and she could see it. And I remember her calling me into her room, and she said, you know what, this isn't working, Paloma. It's just not gonna work for me. I think that I need you to help me do what comes next. And I remember saying, oh God, what is it that you want me to help you do now? And she said, I just want a good death. And as we sat together and I wrote down what that meant to her, what did a good death mean to her, I remember thinking, number one, I can't believe it, once again. And number two, I will do my absolute best to do everything you're asking me to do. She was with us for 7 days, Arlene, and it went so fast that our staff called me at midnight and they said she's changing. Her breathing has changed. So I got in my car. It was about midnight. I got in my car, drove myself to Sarah House, walked in the room, and I realized that what they were telling me was true. She was taking her last breaths. And so I remember everything that she asked me to do. So I turned off the lights. I went to her iPod, I put on the music she told me she wanted. I went back to the office and brought the candles. She wanted candles, she wanted music, she wanted peace. She told me, the moment you feel that I don't need this darn oxygen on, turn it off, because I certainly won't be needing it, and I just want my room to be peaceful. I want my room to have love. I want my room to have light, that light that comes from someone who loves me being in the room. And so I did my best to honor all of those things. I turned off the oxygen machine. I held her hand, and I really felt that I needed to tell her that everything she had done in her career had been beautiful, and that we were so grateful. I felt like I was the voice of so many people that knew her, and I just wanted her to know that. I remember thinking, you're going to get the most beautiful welcome because you've helped so many people. Yes. How could you not? And I was holding her hand at 1:27 a.m. when she took her last breath, and I just felt, and this is why I do this work, because I'm a very lucky person. But what she taught me was that even though I knew and she knew that she was going to die, I still felt brand new at all of that. You know, I couldn't believe it. And then the second part was I wanted to give her anything she wanted. And then the third lesson was I realized she is going to die, and now how can I help you now that we both have accepted that this is going to happen? And I don't know, she was an amazing teacher. I think about her often, I really do, and I still can't believe she's gone, but I'm grateful for everything she did for me.
Paloma, thank you for such a beautiful story, and you know, actually, as you're telling this story, it's not that though the individual is different, this same kind of story happens over and over and over again. And I think the message that I want people to understand is the beauty, the beauty that to hold someone's hand, and I've done it too, when they're taking their last breath, to be with people in when all the other stuff is dropped away, the roles and the noise and the comings and goings and the medications and all the heroics of trying to prolong life.
Yes.
There's just something exquisite about being with someone when they take their last breath, and it's not morbid, it's a privilege. It really is a sacred privilege, and it's what keeps me doing the work I do as well.
Yes.
And I think that many of our viewers have memories of those precious moments when they were with someone. And it doesn't, you know, I remember when our dog died, and that was a precious passing. And when my cat, I mean, you know, it's watching the natural beauty of birth and then the death cycle. I mean, that's really what I'm hoping people get back to the normal flow of what, of in between those things. It's what we do with one another. And you know, thank you for that story. I wanted to jump to a little more practical piece, because there is, just in the little bit of time we have left. So Sarah House is a social model.
Yes.
People come on hospice. They're affiliated with a number of medical organizations in town. Their nurses and doctors come in to do medications and that kind of stuff. You all take care of them. But there's another place in our community called Serenity House.
Yes.
And people get those two confused all the time.
Yes.
And the names, you know, it's Sarah House, Serenity House. Can you help people understand what the difference is?
You know, really, I think we both do the same type of work. We both do hospice care. I believe that the team of Serenity House is an awesome team. It's a beautiful home. If anybody has a chance to go see it, it's an awesome home. They're up on the hill, and we're down on Modoc Street. Our difference is that we don't have round-the-clock nurse, and we cater to the poor. That is our mission.
Right.
If you're wealthy, we can't help you. If you're poor, come over, because we're sure that we can find a way to help you. But other than that, I think that's it.
Except, and I just want to say this, that Serenity House also does charity care for people too. And I want to get that message out. And one of the reasons, I mean, visiting nurse and hospice care, Serenity House is part of that organization. And they're a nonprofit, like Sarah House is a nonprofit.
Yes.
And they raise money. And part of the reason we raise money, because we get funds from Medicare, but part of the reason we raise money is to give away the care.
Yes.
So we have a lot of people, sometimes the beds at Sarah House are full.
Correct.
People need it, And Serenity House is another place where people can choose to go
Yes.
if they don't have any resources.
Yes.
And so we're blessed in our community.
We are. We really
to
are.
have that.
Yes.
So let me just ask you, as we're closing out, if somebody wanted to get involved with Sarah House, if they wanted to see it, if they wanted to help out, how would they do that? What is it that you could use from our community?
Oh my goodness. We welcome anyone who wants to come and see the house, honestly. We are always open to having new volunteers, and our volunteers, really what they do is they come and they help us with our dinner. By helping us cook, by helping us sit down and meet the residents, and then clean up afterwards. So how they could do it is they could call Sarah House, ask for Paloma, and I'm happy to give anybody a tour, whether you want to volunteer, whether you may have someone in your life who you feel is getting close to hospice or needs a bed at Sarah House. I'm happy to come and meet anyone, and I'm happy to open the doors to anyone that's interested.
Well, that's a wonderful invitation, and you know, I would like to tell our community, if you've never been to Sarah House, you owe yourself that gift to see what this jewel is in our community. You know, Paloma, I want to thank you so much for
Thank you, Arlene.
your sharing, for your compassion, for your passion for the work, for making Sarah House the home that it is for people, and for being my guest this evening. I want to thank my crew, Elliot Jacobson and Michael Nicholson and TVSB. To my viewers, if you want to see more of our programs, go to Dying in Grace on YouTube, or follow us at Twitter or dyingingrace.com. Paloma, I'd like you to sign our book of living love, to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. We're so grateful for
Thank you so much.
being with us tonight.
It was a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation. Write her name.